everyone. It's National Treasures, the highlight of yours and ours and our guests' weeks, lockdowns, years. I am, as ever, Will Duggan.
Lockdowns. You put the two lockdowns, not lock.
Well, here's the thing, Laura. Is it locks down or lockdowns? Is a lockdown
or
a
locks
thing?
Downs.
Exactly. Throw an S in, and guess what? They're both apostrophed. Welcome to Lock apostrophe Down apostrophe 3, The Return. These National Treasure interviews, hosted by me, Will Duggan, and you,
Laura Lex.
the grammatically correct Laura Lex. This is the interview series of the podcast series where we interview some highly knowledgeable people about things that they know and do. Laura and I witter like baboons for about half an hour and everyone enjoys it. And by everyone, I still do mean everyone. How are you today, Laura?
I'm all right. I'm very hungry right now. Tom brought me out a Boost with my cup of tea while I was painting the fence, and I didn't eat it because I'm trying to eat a bit better, and I really regret that now I'm sitting here.
Couple of quick questions. What colour are you painting the fence?
It's called Autumn Gold. It's meant to just look like slightly healthier wood.
So yellow.
Orange, I'd say.
My favourite phrase for orange is burnt sienna.
Oh, yeah. Or burnt umber was
Burnt
another
umber.
one. It was the watercolours we had at school was raw sienna and burnt umber.
Raw sienna. Like
sienna.
It means nothing to Jude Law.
How's your day been today?
I haven't been feeling it today.
No?
Today is the record of this is the day after the pubs reopened. I really took advantage of it. And today has been a bit of an uphill struggle.
We've got a returning guest today, Will Duggan.
We have indeed. One of my favourite guests, but they're all my favourites.
And I always feel, because I feel like we don't know what we're doing, which I hope is the charm of the show. And so I'm always a bit relieved when people say they'll come back, because it means that they haven't gone away really angry about having given up an evening.
Do you want to come back? No, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So the last time we saw this man, he was telling us about warfare and Kenilworth Castle. But this time he's come for a slightly more peaceful stimulus?
What?
Reason?
Why have you said stimulus?
Because that's like the start point of the interview.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to touch his nipples.
It just seemed a really intimate word to use, stimulus. All right, yeah. The stimulus package for this show is... I don't like that you said stimulus. No. Listen, how's a non-creepy way to introduce? It's Tom Garner, everybody. You'll remember him from the Kenilworth Castle episode, and he's come to talk to us.
Just get him on. Get him on.
A stimulating farm. Ooh.
Hello, Tom. You look stimulated.
Hi.
Hello. What a lovely introduction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you stimulated? Oh, it's a horrible word. It's losing all meaning now. Stimulated. Ugh.
No, it reminds me of like GCSE drama where you'd get shown a picture of like a war and the teacher go, there's your stimulus. Come back in an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean
quite a
like
fancy word, stimulus.
I'd have said that, but you went for erotic.
Yeah, I did. Maybe I made it weird. I don't know.
Totally.
Anyway, hello,
I'm struggling
Tom.
to know what to say, but hello. It's nice to see you.
Hello, Tom.
Hey, how have you been since we last saw you in Castletown?
Oh, I've been fine, thank you. I still live in Castletown. I live in the same town as I live in Kenilworth, but not in the castle. But no, I've been fine, thank you. I'm very pleased that the lockdown is opening up a little bit. It's nice to have a slight sense of normality coming back. I mean, it's all been a bit of a strange time for everybody.
It has. It's been a slog. We've had some big meetings so the original podcast that spawned this interview series, we've had some big plans this week for getting series 2 out and about, and it's just like, come on, the end is in sight.
I always thought the biggest roadblock of my career would be my own ability to work and not the country being shut for a year. I couldn't have envisaged it, Tom. I couldn't have envisaged it.
None of us can.
So where are you telling us about today, Tom?
So today I'm going to be talking to you about Mary Arden's farm, which is also in Warwickshire, but it's a completely different kettle of fish to Kenilworth Castle. It's a property belonging to the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. And it's originally the home of Shakespeare's mother, Mary Arden.
Okay. I like it. All right. So, and it's Mary Arden's farm.
That's right. That's right. It's a working Tudor farm. That's what's unique about it.
Hey, I like
It's an
that.
actual farm, but it's run on Tudor agricultural methods, and people dressed up in Tudor costumes, like myself a few years ago. And yeah, so it's kind of doing farming literally the old-fashioned way.
Great.
By that, do you mean the staff don't get paid and owe their crofts to the Lord?
I mean, luckily times have moved on since then. Nowadays, they do get there are wages, mercifully, but you are given rigid social roles within the farm, as it would have been back in the day. So my job was as a Tudor day labourer, which is effectively a wandering peasant. And so I was pretty much at the bottom of the heap. But there's also there's a master of the household, a mistress of the household, there's a blacksmith, there's all sorts going on.
Did you all get on behind the scenes?
Pardon?
Did you all get on behind the scenes? Like, were you allowed to?
Yeah. It's amazing what hierarchy will do to, foster good working relationships.
I feel like if you're the sort of person that's accepted a job playing in character working on a Tudor farm, you've probably got shared interests with the other people also working there.
Kind of, yes. You have got a history bond in common. But when I started, I had no farming experience, so that was a...
Who does in this day and age?
Who does?
We've got some questions about the farm. Now, they range from the brilliant to the very brilliant. So,
all ears.
Laura, would you like to begin as we start the barrage of knowledge on Tom?
Yeah, my first question really. So it's called Mary Arden's farm.
Yeah.
And Mary Arden was Shakespeare's mother.
That's right. Yeah.
Why do we call it Mary Arden's farm? Why isn't it Mr. and Mrs. Shakespeare's farm? Because she was called Mrs. Shakespeare, wasn't she? So Arden is her maiden name. Mm. So Mary was she was the youngest of 8 sisters born to Robert Arden. And she lived on what is now called the complex, now called Mary Arden's Farm. Mary Arden's Farm is not in Stratford-upon-Avon, where William Shakespeare is from. It's a few miles to the northwest in a little village called Wilmcote. And because even though she was the youngest of 8 sisters, Mary clearly had some ability because she inherited some of Robert's land after he died, and she also executed his will. And that meant that the money that she inherited was quite useful when she got married to Shakespeare's father, who is John Shakespeare. And then, of course, then she's Mary Shakespeare until she dies in 1608. So that's kind of where it starts, and that's why we call it Mary Arden's Farm today. It just distinguishes it from, say, Shakespeare's birthplace or Anne Hathaway's cottage, which was his wife. Okay.
So it's that
okay. Because if you called it Shakespeare's Farm, people would be like, Shakespeare, what we think of Shakespeare means only that guy and no one else.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a nice differentiate. That's a big word. I can't even say it.
Why are there so many places about like where Shakespeare's sort of affiliated with, but not like Shakespeare's house? Why have we got his wife's cottage, his mum's farm, the place where he was born? But why can't I just go to Shakespeare's house?
You could just go to. Well, actually, you can't go to Shakespeare's house. Technically, when he became a rich playwright, he bought a property in Stratford called New Place, but that got torn down in the 18th century, so all you've got left now is a garden. And so I think with the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, it's quite rare that there are really old properties in a relatively small area that still exist from the Tudor period. So you've got, of course, the Birthplace, which is the most famous one. It's the centerpiece of the whole charity of the trust. But then you've got his wife's cottage, Anne Hathaway's cottage. Then you've got Mary Arden's farm, and there are other properties too, like Hull's Croft, which belonged to his son-in-law. It is very rare to have family properties from the Tudor period, all pretty much in an intact state, within about a 2 to 3 mile radius. So that's why. So it's a really unique preservation project, effectively.
What was his rich man house called?
A New Place, so N-E-W, New Place.
Greatest writer the language has ever seen, and he called his new place, New Place.
Not very imaginative. No, you would have thought he would have given it some Shakespearean edge or something, like Midsummer Cottage, but no.
The point of the quill point.
Oh, I like that.
You see, the souvenir shops in Stratford have done that for him. most shops in Stratford are pretty much the Quill Point, a Midsummer's Night Butcher, that sort
A
of thing.
Midsummer's Night Butcher. Surely you'd call the hotel a Midsummer Night's Dream. The butcher should be called Hamlet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is true.
Well,
This is
you
true.
should do that for a living. You do. That was so quick. I'm so impressed with you. So saying like that there's not normally a lot of Tudor places intact all on top of each other. How intact is the farmhouse?
So with the farmhouse, it's actually quite a weird story. When they bought the property, it's actually a complex of buildings, is Mary Arden's farm, and there are actually 2 properties on it, as well as say you've got the barns and stables. Then there's what people thought was Mary Arden's house. It's a big rickety black and white wattle door building. It's on all the postcards. And then there's a smaller little red brick cottage. Now, when they bought the property, the trust in the 20th century, they thought the big house was Mary Arden's farm, as you kind of naturally would. But then they discovered a rather awkward mistake. They found out that the Victorian red brick building was actually her farm. Now, the reason I said Victorian is because the interior is the 16th century. And they did some dendrochronology, which is like wood analysis, and it dated to 1514, and the red brick was just literally the exterior. And so the big house belonged to the Arden family's neighbour, a guy called Palmer. So now that's called Palmer's Farm. And then where Mary Arden lives is called Glebe Farm. So it's a bit of a lie, what the tourist brochures tell you, and they made a massive mistake. So thank goodness that they bought the smaller farm by accident.
So they bought the wrong house.
They bought the wrong house.
Did Shakespeare, I've got so many questions. Did Shakespeare have farms in any of his plays that you can sort of like link back to him having had this as a like stimulus in his upbringing?
Well, for example, there's a lot of the famous conspiracy that he didn't write his own plays.
Don't believe it. Not buying it. Not having it.
But they'll say things like, oh, it was the Earl of Oxford, or it was Christopher Marlowe who really did it. He somehow survived his own death, and that kind of stuff. But the fact remains that a lot of Shakespeare's plays are full of agricultural terms that would not have been that familiar to somebody like the Earl of Oxford, who would have been an aristocrat, who would not have been a farmer. More specifically, there are lots of Warwickshire-based phrases that are used in the places. Yeah, so Christopher Marlowe was from Kent, so he would not have been. And bear in mind that the world is a much smaller place back then. If you're from Kent, you're not going to go to Warwickshire that often, particularly. So the dialects are a lot more pronounced. So the most famous example the one that I liked the most was, you know, when you have a blade of grass and you put it between your fingers and you blow on it and it makes a sound. So the word that Shakespeare used was kexies, and that's a local Warwickshire term. Now, someone like the Earl of Oxford will not necessarily know that that is a kexie, particularly if it's a Warwickshire-based word. So it's little nuanced things like that that gives it away where Shakespeare's own upbringing and birthplace.
Yeah. That's so cool. When I worked on, you know, the show Upstart Crow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I worked on that for the second and third series. I was the studio warm-up in the thing, and Ben Elton, who obviously wrote it, would come out and do quite a lot of chatting with the audience. And I always really liked when he'd say, like, he's a big believer that Shakespeare did write it and doesn't believe any of the conspiracies. And he always used to say, like, when have you ever known a posh bloke not take credit for having done the work? Like, why would you write all this stuff and then put it under someone else's name?
You mentioned dialect, Tom. Now, here's a question that you may not know, and that's fine. It's out of the remit.
That's fine, yeah.
I have heard that the accent of the UK and of Shakespeare would have been more similar to the New England accent of America now than what we think of an English accent.
Can you do that accent?
Boston,
Can you say?
My boy's wicked smart. I'm Peter Griffin from Boston.
Loved it.
How'd you like them apples, Hamlet? The king's dead, or whatever.
It might explain why Shakespeare is so popular with American audiences. He's absolutely. I can't. Well, it's an interesting question. There was a lot of theories about how the American accents evolved, perhaps from English accents for instance. I mean, we're not going to totally know. There's a case that they might have sounded quite like West Country yokels in the New World.
All right, that's me. That is
Originally, yeah. I mean, there's a very good TV series called John Adams. It stars Paul Giamatti, and he plays the second US president. And they try and do what they think are authentic American accents for the time, and they're a strange mixture of kind of, it's an English accent and it's got a slight West Country edge. It sounds quite yokelish.
Well, I guess that makes sense if you think, like, was it the Plymouth Brethren were the first sort of people, and then didn't they settle in the Netherlands for sort of 10 years or so before coming back to the UK and then going over and like making the first Puritan settlements?
So do you mean these are the Pilgrim Fathers? So
yeah, it was Plymouth, wasn't it, that they left from?
So basically, the Pilgrim Fathers, you're right. They're Puritans from England, and they live in the Netherlands for a bit, and then they go back to England and sail from Plymouth, and they land in the New World, and they set up a colony, and they imaginatively call it Plymouth. It's and then that's, you got the gist there. Yeah, they're contemporaries of Shakespeare, definitely.
Well, that makes sense then if they talk like this. That's how we sound down there.
There's something wrong in the state of Denmark.
With some histories as well, with Shakespeare specifically, sometimes they'll think, oh, well, he might have sounded like a Brummie, for example. There's no real evidence for that, and linguistically, it might not be true, because
Romeo.
Midlands accents are actually quite varied. In what people from Warwickshire nowadays don't talk like people in, say, Birmingham or the Black Country. And the reason that some linguistic scholars think that because there's a huge swathe of forest that covered central Warwickshire and then what is now Birmingham, there would have been some kind of linguistic divide. It goes right back to the Danelaw and the Vikings and that sort of thing. So we're not entirely sure, but I think it would have been quite nice if Shakespeare sounded like a Brummie. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Deny thy father, refuse thy name.
Oh no, yeah.
I'm from the Midlands. This is a Midlands accent.
Good. Whereabouts are you from?
Kettering.
Northamptonshire. Ah.
Very close.
Yeah. That's the thing. I think that the accents, between Northamptonshire and Warwickshire, they're more similar than say Brummie, because Birmingham is quite distinctive.
My father's a Brummie.
Yeah.
Doesn't come out unless he's drunk, in which case he's all, would you like a pint? Do you want another pint now, yo?
Yeah.
I guess though, like whatever his accent was then, Shakespeare would have sounded quite different to everybody down in London. Like he wouldn't have sounded like Cockneys did.
No, I assume he definitely wouldn't have sounded like a Cockney, because again, that's distinctive in of itself. But of course, then London back in the day, then as now, was a very multicultural place. You would have heard accents from all over the place. Of course, we're not going to know it would have been great to have had a voice recording of Shakespeare to get a sense of the man, but we simply don't. And because he writes in a very unique style with his iambic pentameter, again, that strips away who we think. It strips away his personality. It's very good prose. But it doesn't give a sense of who he was necessarily. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's all lost in it's all mystery. Unfortunately, a lot of it.
I very nearly asked then why we didn't have a voice recording. Why didn't we do that? Also,
yes! I love it when I haven't said the dumbest thing on an episode.
When you mentioned the TV show John Adams about you, and you went the second US president, I spent a good going. Which one was? It was John Adams. It was the clue was there for me all along. Hello everyone, it's the weekly advert from us, by us, to us, well, to you in a way. We hope you're enjoying the interview. I'm sure you are. We've done a brilliant job. A couple of thank yous for the Patreon listeners. We want to say thank you to Jamie and Alison, who are our newest patrons. Thank you, Jamie and Alison! Thank you so much. They have joined the most exclusive club in the world. They are now members of the National Treasures Patreon. They are getting nice things. What are they getting, Laura?
They're getting access to our Discord. They're getting extra bits of video. They're getting the videos as an audio download podcast, so they can listen to them without being here on YouTube. And they're getting years and years the extra podcast that we do every week just for our patrons. And we thought to show you what that's like, here's a little clip.
Basically a nice guy, but one of the cool things he was good for, he was one of the main voices of support for Joan of Arc.
Oh!
So she pretended to be a man, led the army at Orleans, did a great victory. Turned out she was a woman. They weren't having any of it. She said, but God told me to do it. They were like, back off, you're a woman. God doesn't talk to birds. He's actually celibate. Read the Bible, you nerd. She went, no, but God talked to me. Like, you're a witch. Stop it. On the stake. But he, quite a prominent man, both in the church and education, went, no, this adds up to me. She's cool.
She described his voice and it sounded like the one I've heard.
Yeah. Has he got a bit of a lisp? Yeah. It's the guy. That's God. That's God.
Yeah. What password did he give you?
Does he talk with a slightly Middle Eastern accent? Not in 1300s France, he doesn't. He talks in a French accent.
In terms of the time, obviously then Mary Arden's farm, having been mistaken for the fancy house, it wasn't like the fanciest farmhouse on the block, but was it reasonable? Like, so he came from humble but not like what did his parents like? They had some of this farm income. What did they do?
Well, Shakespeare is it's worth pointing out that Shakespeare wasn't a peasant. I think people think, he's a common man, so they therefore think, he's at the bottom end of the social scale. He wasn't. So Shakespeare's dad, John Shakespeare, was a glover, so he made gloves, which was a skilled profession in those days and a lucrative one for his social class. And right. John also served as the Lord Mayor of Stratford on one occasion.
Oh, wow.
So he was quite high up in civic society. His grandfather, Robert Arden, so Mary Arden's dad, he was a tenant farmer. So he didn't really own the land, he rented it, but he was wealthy. And when I mean wealthy, he had lots that was going on his farm. So I've got some notes here that said that, so Robert Arden rented 70 acres, and that's a lot of land to rent in both Wilmcote and Snitterfield, which is nearby, which is another village near Stratford. And amongst these farms, he would raise horses, cattle, sheep, pigs, and he also grew crops like wheat, barley, oats, and peas. Now, if you're a peasant at the lowest rung, you haven't got that sort of wealth to rent 70 acres. That's land like that is expensive even today.
Tom, I think we've asked you more than enough questions. Do you have any questions for Laura and I?
Oh, yes. So I've prepared a quiz for you both. I've got 3 questions.
I love this bit.
So Mary Arden, her surname is Arden. Now, coincidentally, Mary Arden, the Arden name comes from the Forest of Arden. Now, the forest covered a huge swathe of Warwickshire at the time, so it's where Mary gets her name from. But it's mentioned in one of Shakespeare's plays. So my question to you is, in which play does the Forest of Arden appear?
Is it Midsummer Night's Dream? Is that the forest that they go in and find Bottom and Titania and Oberon and that lot?
So you're close. So I'll give you a clue. It's one of the comedies. So it's not a tragedy or a history play.
Just, I'll be honest with you. As soon as Tom said comedies, my brain just said Say Beverly Hills Cop, and I'm finding it very hard to think of anything that isn't Beverly Hills Cop. Is it the Comedy of Errors?
No, it's not. Shall I tell the answer? So the play is As You Like It.
Oh, bollocks!
That's a Jack Nicholson film. That's as good as it gets. Fuck!
So, this one has got multiple answers.
Yes, okay.
So, how many common phrases originate from Tudor table manners?
What's the question?
Common phrases, as in, so if this is one, I will throw it to the wolves. Do you mean like no elbows on the table, or is that a table?
Yeah, no, you're bang on. You're bang on with that sort of thing. So I'll give you an example. So elbows on the table. So tables in Tudor times are not as we know them. Then they called them boards. And the reason is tables nowadays, the legs are fixed to the surface. Whereas in those days, it's literally a planked wooden board.
So you'd upend it.
Yeah, so you put your elbows on, it could flip the food over.
Like Alan Partridge when he's doing Dante's Fires. No, Alan, you can't.
Yeah, basically. Something like that.
Got a new light, sir. 12 LED torches attached to a chandelier.
But there are many phrases. I've made a list. I've counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you've already got one of them. So you got don't put your elbows on the table.
Okay. No talking with your mouth full.
Something you're very close. Say, for example, have you heard the expression "don't put a knife, don't eat with a knife"?
Yeah.
Now, most knives nowadays they're just lightly serrated, but in those days, knives were your proper sharp blades. So if you knife something and put it in your mouth, you could accidentally, put a hole in it, for example. Most of the phrases though come with the word board, as in the board part of the table. And they covered 5 of the 6 answers. So think about the word board.
Above board.
Yes, that's one. Above
Room and board.
Sorry?
Room and board?
Bed and board, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Under the boardwalk, down by the sea.
You've got 3 out of the 6 already. I'm very impressed.
Board walk empire.
All aboard.
Not quite. No.
So like a boarding house then probably comes from.
So that comes
all,
more of the bed and board. So if you were hosting someone, you would say we can offer you a bed and we can offer you board, as in we can offer you a meal.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
the boardroom, like as in like.
You are very close with boardroom.
So
chairman of the board.
There you go. Chairman of the board.
Well done, Will.
I'll explain that to you. So when you had a meal, say you're on a farm, and you're a day labourer like myself, and there's several people like me around the table, and then there's the guy who owns the farm, and he's the master of the house. Now he'll give you food as part of your wages for the day. So when you gather around the table, everyone else will sit on stools. But because he's the master of the house, he'll sit on a chair, and therefore he's the chairman of the board.
Lovely, real nice. Yeah,
it's one of these things that it's these things that people don't really think about.
No.
Shall I tell you the other 3? Because they're quite.
Yeah.
Did you say boardroom, Laura?
Yeah.
What do you have in a boardroom? What can you conduct in a boardroom?
A meeting.
Board meeting. Yeah. So that's literally when the master of the house asks his labourers about conditions on the farm. They're meeting around the board to discuss how things going, how the crops, how the livestock.
Isn't that amazing that it comes from like 400-500 years ago? It's the most important person sitting at a table in the only chair talking to some very low down hierarchically people, and that is the chairman of the board just having a board meeting. I love that.
It's funny how these sort of things trickle down the centuries.
Yeah.
Particularly a chairman of the board, like is now a head of a company, for example. Yeah. It's very strange. You've got 2 more. I'm very impressed. The 4 out of 6. That's fantastic.
I think we were heavily clued in.
No.
You've really figured out how to pitch this to us. Board. Did you say above board, Laura?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, did you say above? I missed that. Did you say above board?
Oh, yeah, above board, like all above board.
Above board. Yeah. Sorry, that's my mistake. I missed that. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's all right.
So above board. I know. So with above board is when the master pays his labourers at the end of the day, because you get paid on a daily basis, and to make sure there's no fraudulent activities going on, he placed all the money on top of the board. So it's placed at his desk to make sure that everything is literally above board, and as opposed to slipping you money under the table, for example, or withholding money. So that's above board, and then the final one is actually there's an element of fun to it. So you got a nice fun one to end on.
Board games.
Yeah, board games. There you go. So board games. So bear in mind the table is not fixed. So if you have your dinner on the board, and if it's Sunday, for example, and you want to have a day of have a bit of recreation, and you tip the board over, and there might be games scratched underneath, like a chessboard.
Fun, yeah, like a grid that you can use for lots of different games.
Yeah.
I'm going to give us 3 each there, Laura.
Oh, I definitely got more than you.
I think you guys can have full marks, to be honest, because you got all of those. That's great.
3 each. We're a team, end of the day. And it makes the last bit a bit of Jeopardy.
Okay, yeah, all right.
So that was question 2. Question
Okay.
3 is a show and tell thing. So, and don't be too freaked out. So this is my Tudor spoon from when I used to work on the farm.
Don't chew the spoon, just use it to eat your soup.
Da 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 da. Treasure spots.
That's right. So, as a 16th century person, weirdly, your spoon was quite important, which is bizarre to think. So, as a Tudor day labourer, what would my spoon say about me? What does it say?
If it was metal, you were on heroin.
If it had some strings going along the whole thing, you wish you were a bard or a minstrel.
A tiny minstrel.
Not quite. It's to do.
Tudor hipster dickhead with a ukulele.
I think I'm going to lose a couple of my acres. Let me get the world's tiniest lute.
Would it been what it was made of? So
Yeah,
like how
so
long a
material is important.
lasting? Yeah.
So you're on the sort of right track. So you definitely know the material. The material denotes social status. So have you ever heard the expression "born with a silver spoon in your mouth"?
Mm-hmm.
So that effectively means if you had a silver spoon, you came from a relatively wealthy, prosperous family.
Okay.
So weirdly, the spoons had a sort of a social structure to them. So this spoon here is made out of cow horn, and it was given to me as a day labourer. Now it means that I'm poor, but I'm not poor enough. It means I can afford a spoon whittled out of horn. Whereas if you're really, really poor, like the lowest of the low, you'd have a wooden spoon.
Come last in a race.
Yeah, and even today, a wooden spoon is a booby prize.
Yeah.
Games. So that's where it comes from. So I'm of the lower middling sort with this horn spoon. So to speak.
Right.
What would silver be like the best? Because gold is too soft, I imagine, or heavy.
Diamond spoons.
There is well, you're right about gold being soft, but bear in mind gold has the same value then as it does now, in that it's the top element. But silver, like you say, has a more practical value, and it's slightly more affordable than gold is. So yeah, you're definitely on the right track there. Yeah. And of course you want to preserve your cutlery as much as you can, because this is a permanent fixture. It's not like today where you have like a plastic spoon, you just kind of dispose of it. This you carry around with you the entire time. And it's for hygiene purposes too, because they haven't got because diseases aren't so well understood. They would carry their own spoons with them so they wouldn't cross-contaminate.
Yeah.
For instance, although I don't recommend putting this in coffee. I did, and it's become stained, so it's not a good idea.
There you go. If you are watching, if you've got a spoon made of cow horn, for the love of God, don't stir your coffee with it.
No.
It'll stain. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. If people haven't heard of William Shakespeare or farming, where can people see or encounter a bit of this? Obviously, when the world's open, they can come and visit Mary Arden's farm in Wimplington.
In Wilmcote, yeah. So you can visit Mary Arden's farm in Wilmcote. It's in Warwickshire, and it's run by the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. So if you wanted to find out about visiting, you visit their website, for example. If you want to find out more about Tudor table manners, I actually wrote an article for a website. It's called Tudor Come Dine With Me. And you can find it on www.historyanswers.co.uk.
Brilliant.
So there we go. If you want to find out more about how the Tudors ate and why they ate the way they did, then go and consult that.
And your personal social media, anything you want to get people towards? Because you're a fountain of knowledge.
So my current date, so I used to work for the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust, but now I'm the features editor of History of War magazine, which is a military history magazine. I am also a frequent contributor to All About History, which is a general history magazine. So you can find those you can find their pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can buy them or subscribe at magazinesdirect.com, and you can buy them in things like WH Smith and large supermarkets and things like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, Tom. You have been. Come and see us again.
Yes, and if you liked Tom, which I'm sure you did, don't forget to check out the Kenilworth Castle episode if you haven't already. He tells us all about warfare and Kenilworth, and it's very good.
Brilliant. Goodbye, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well, that was fun.
It was fun. He's so clever.
You've got such a crush, haven't
Actually,
you?
I am. I think were I to be a slightly more annoying person, I would class myself as a sapiosexual. I'm turned on by intelligence, and that boy presses all my buttons.
He's your stimulus.
You're too kind.
If you've enjoyed this, which I'm sure you have because it's been super, do follow Tom. All the links will be at the end of the video to things he's mentioned. But follow us as well. We are at TreasuresPod on Twitter and Instagram. You can email us at nationaltreasurespodcast@gmail.com. You can like and subscribe and give 5 stars to our podcast series, National Treasures, wherever you get your podcasts. You can like and subscribe to this video, wherever you watch it, which is YouTube. That's where I've put it. And if you like us and want to give us some money so we can keep making stuff that we love, you can go to patreon.com/National Treasures. Covered it all.
Yeah.
Anything to add,
We love
Laura?
you. Thanks for watching. We love Shakespeare and farms.
Exit, pursued by a bear.
My hand was the bear.
Loved it. And that'll do.